Hello everyone, I'm Sahid. Thank you for clicking this video. I am very happy that you're here. Today I will be reading chapter 15 to continue my chapter series on this Canadian literature book that I've been reading for the past month or more. It's called Moon of the Crusted Snow by waubgeshig. And to give a brief summary, it's about a small indigenous community within the northern part of Canada known as the anishinaabe community. And for the past few months now, through these for around fall to the deep winter, they've been dealing with a power outage that's deeply affecting their community because they've had to make sudden changes within their community because they no longer have high internet access. They have no electricity, no TV, no sort of communication with the outside world, and they're sort of left helpless. The community leaders can't really do anything to help the community because they also have no idea of what to do. They have to sort of find ways to preserve energy because now they're currently using an emergency generator for the meantime, but it's going to end up not working. And this is starting to create a sense of panic. People are worried, but then we come to find out that it's not only their community that's facing this. Nearby community is also dealing with things like this, and we come to realize in the previous few chapters that nearby communities like Gibson, they are also facing the power outage, and it's escalated to the point with people are engaging in this immense violence. People are fighting one another. People are killing each other. There's starting to be blood. People are dying. We learn about a student who died from sort of starvation because food ran out and there's no power. There's nothing for the students to eat, and it's just a lot of chaos that took place. And so people within this community are also worried when they hear the story that the two teenage boys who flee told them. People within the council members are worried. And in the last chapter, we realize that Nicole McLeod, who is the wife to Even White Sky, he is a maintenance staff who is part of the band council, and she's like worried about how other people are gonna cope with this and how their family are gonna cope with this. And then we have Even trying to just kind of calm her down, and we get to this point in chapter 15 that I will now read about. Yeah. Okay. But I like to mention before I start my chapters that please watch the previous chapters before this one, as they give you a bit more idea of how we got to the point in which we are in now in this book, and they give you a good and sort of a better idea of the book. And so please watch the previous videos. Okay. Chapter 15. Walter McGee's sat behind the desk in the shop's lunchroom. He leaned his chair back and propped his heavy steel-toed winter boots on the table. His jacket was wide open, and under it he wore a flannel shirt tucked into his jeans. Chief Terry paced back and forth while Dave McGee pored over invoices, charts, and documents about energy consumption, with Ethan and Isaiah looking over his shoulders. To Ethan, the numbers just bled together on the page, and Isaiah looked equally bewildered. Dave was muttering to himself, and neither wanted to interrupt him. The front door blasted open, and a rush of cold air followed. Evan's parents stumped in, shaking off the snow that had fallen. into their hoods and coated their shoulders and sleeves. Another snowfall was blanketing the community. Go back them. Nah, called Dan. You boys hungry? He held a big steel pot, almost as wide as his torso, and Patricia carried bulging black canvas bags in each hand. Her glasses had fogged up in the sudden warmth, and she peered over them as she walked towards the small group. Dan dropped the pot onto the table suspiciously near Walter's raised feet and chuckled. Walter pretended to scold as he dropped his boots to the ground. Got some stew for Yaz, Dan said. Pat's got the bannock and bowls and stuff. Here you go, boys, Patricia said, as she placed the bags on the table. Chi miigwech, Pat, said Walter. No, you guys are the ones to thank, keeping this place going. Well, we're doing what we can. I just wish we could tell everyone for sure when this will all be fixed. Ah, don't worry about it, she said with a shrug. They can cope. Most of us didn't even have hydro or running water when we were kids. Yeah, people around here sure got soft, eh? They both cackled, and the men around them chuckled. If only they knew, even thought. Okay, well, we better let you boys get back to work, said Dan. Enjoy the meechim. Chi miigwech, they all said, almost in unison as Evan's parents walked back out to their truck. What the fuck are we supposed to tell people anyway? Blurted Dave. We'll get to that, Terry replied. We can't let this get out of hand right now. I'm hungry. He went to the pot, filled his bowl, grabbed a piece of bannock, and sat down. Evan followed suit and sat down next to him. The bannock was still warm. His mouth watered and he realized he hadn't eaten since early morning. He dipped a corner of the fried dough into the thick liquid and shoved it in his mouth. The savory sauce overpowered even the heavy salt in the bread. Before long, all of the men were eaten. Back at his table, Dave swallowed his last bite and spoke up. All right, he said, looking down at the sheets of paper spread out before him. I have some good news and some bad news. What do you want first? Don't fuck around, Dave. Just tell us what we need to know, ordered Terry. Dave slid his glasses down his nose and pushed up the sleeves of his gray hoodie, revealing the faded blue tattoos on his forearms. Fine, he said, rearranging a few of the sheets. According to last year's energy usage, we have enough diesel to last us until the end of February, at the latest. That's what we thought all along. But we push conservation on the people like we're doing since we fired these back up. We may be able to stretch that onto the end of March, maybe even April. It all depends on how much wood people have and if they get lazy. Since there's no guarantee we'll even get diesel again, I recommend we go ahead as we have been. We may as well ease them into spring. If people don't play along and we end up losing it all halfway through the winter, there will be total fucking chaos. They'll for sure be dead. We have to break the news to them soon, Terry muttered, resting his face in his hands. People are antsy, and they deserve to know. We'll hold another meeting. We're in a crisis and everyone's survival depends on cooperation. They're gonna panic again. It might get ugly, but it has to be done. Eventually, they'll get used to it. When should we do it? Asked Dave. Tomorrow afternoon. That'll give these boys a chance to get the roads nice and clear, and this time, we definitely have to feed them. How do you suggest doing that? Said Even. The cache. That's the only way. Stored in a bunker below the garage at the water treatment plant was a massive cache of non-perishable food for emergency measures. A fortified secret pantry was also hidden behind one of the garage's brick walls. Thousands upon thousands of cans and boxes had been stored there for nearly 2 decades. Connection to the world, to the south, could be disrupted easily, so the chief and council of the time had passed a resolution outlining a well-maintained and updated cache of goods that could keep upwards of 500 people fed for at least 2 years. Few people besides councillors knew the extent of it or where it was stored, although its existence was generally known. Gossip spread quickly in this small community, so those with specific knowledge of the food cache had kept it to themselves to protect it from raiding before it was actually needed. No one had ever really taken a prolonged disconnection from the South seriously, though. We will decide what we will need to get out of there that morning, Terry went on. It won't be that hard to heat everything up. There will be more people than last time. All right, agreed Walter. He turned to look at Even and Isaiah. Even and Izzy, you guys go get Tyler and start plugging wherever is needed. Then it looks like we've got to send out more notice. And that is the end of chapter 15. Also not that long. Okay, let's sort of discuss about chapter 15. It was quite short. It starts with sort of the council members about to discuss about how they could potentially save energy, but before Dave, who was the guy that was gonna talk about it, had a chance, even parents come in with food, sort of in an enthusiastic feeling. Dan and Patricia come over with food for the band counselors, sort of emphasizing how they're keeping things maintained, but deep down, they are thinking to themselves, like, are we really keeping things maintained? Because the truth is that they haven't even told people, like Evan's parents, about the story of what occurred in Gibson that they recently heard about. And even sort of has a moment in which he says, only if they knew, meaning that only if they knew about what was happening to nearby communities and what could eventually possibly happen to their community. And so it's kind of like a really interesting moment because we have these sort of older people who come by, expressing sort of a thanks and gratitude to the band counselor for trying to, or not even trying, for keeping things maintained because that's what they think. But the deep down truth is that they are fully thinking they are, because they have these guilts about not telling people what's going on and what could possibly happen in their community, because they're trying to make sure that things don't escalate to the point that it did in places like Gibson. And so it's interesting. That little moment was interesting to me. And then we have the point in which Dave continues his sort of speech, and he's like saying, what they initially believed was that the diesel would last in generator for about a few months until February, but he believes that he sort of expressed a new sort of belief that if people sort of preserve more, it could possibly last into like April, onto months such as April, or I think he mentioned March. And so this sort of shows ways in which they're still trying to find a possible solution, or sort of a way to express some sort of sense of hope, in a sense of, okay, things will be fine if people do things a certain way. And so now the community leader, Terry, wants to send a notice that they're going to have a meeting, and in this meeting they're going to discuss these things that Dave discussed in their band council meeting. And while doing this, they're also going to give food, and even sort of questions that, or I think it was either even or one of the other guys questions that, how are they going to give them food when they literally are trying to preserve food and they don't have food in their community. But then Terry mentions about this cachet that have been preserved through years and generations in case of emergencies like this, that could feed 500, more than 500 people for 2 years. And so that's sort of where they're going to get food for on the day of the meeting. And so now they want to send notices, and they're going to have another meeting. And that's what I believe they will be discussing about in chapter 16. And so that's kind of a summary of chapter 15. So I hope you join me for chapter 16, and we get to hear more about this meeting that's upcoming. Okay, once again, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you. Bye.